Hello, my name is Timothy Lai. I'm a student of Western Illinois University, and I'm here to talk about, as part of my advanced operating system course, I'm here to talk about a very great article that I chanced on as part of my assignment. The topic for the paper, or the heading of the paper, is playing for the K hips, which is the kernel hips, and understanding and improving Linux kernel exploit reliability. So that's the the title of the article. It was written by Jen K and then Chen, but it has its affiliations with Arizona State University, Pennsylvania State University, and Sun Sil University. Yeah, so let's dive straight into it. So this paper, actually, to present this paper, I just want to present to you the table of contents. We are firstly going to talk about the introduction, and then we will talk about the research goals. I mean, we'll talk about the goals of the paper. We are going to talk about the research questions that erupted. That's why the research came about. And then we will talk about the research approach, about how they approach the methodology and everything. And then afterwards, we are going to talk about the future research directions of the same paper with respect to the Linux kernel heap exploit. So that is what we are going to dive into. But we are going to base more emphasis on the research approach and how they were able to do things, their methods and their findings, what they found out and everything. We are going to base more emphasis on the research approach. And then finally, we are going to talk about the conclusion of what happened and how they were able to pull up whatever they put together. So that is the table of contents. That's the plan for our paper today, the presentation of this paper today. So with the introduction, I want to introduce what the paper is talking about. It talks about the Linux kernel, which is an integral to it's very integral to modern computing, with many components that dynamically allocate and deallocate memory from the kernel heap. This dynamic nature makes it difficult to assess the reliability of kernel heap exploits, as the layout of the heap can change unpredictably. The paper actually presents a systematic study of the kernel heap exploits reliability problem. And over the years, there's been a lot of concerns, and a lot of researchers has put in some efforts to be able to circumvent this problem. So this paper actually addresses the problem of the kernel heap exploit reliability. It has certain challenges, and I'm going to highlight some of them, and then we are going to talk about where the research is going to focus. Yeah. So the kernel heap exploits rely on a precise predictions about the heap layout, which can be disrupted by factors like memory allocator, the task scheduler, and the task scheduler. Yeah, this unpredictability leads to exploit failures, and makes heap-based Linux kernel exploitation notoriously unreliable. So all these challenges actually makes the Linux kernel exploitation unreliable. It doesn't make it reliable. Yeah. And that is where this paper comes in. Now, one of the challenges is it has an impact on the security of the Linux kernel. The unreliability of the kernel heap exploit makes it difficult to assess the true impact of the vulnerabilities, potentially leading to and underestimating of its severity. Yeah, so we are actually seeing here that it actually makes it impossible. It makes it a bit difficult for the Linux kernel to experience some kind of security. The second impact is on the development and researchers. Yeah, the developers may prioritize fixing or fixes of vulnerabilities that are considered easily exploitable over those that are unreliable to trigger and leaving a window for attackers to exploit unfixed vulnerabilities. So it's actually saying here that in the quest for us to, or in the quest for developers to fix the vulnerabilities, it actually leaves a window or a space for attackers to exploit the unfixed vulnerabilities. Now, this research actually aims to address the kernel heap exploit reliability problem by studying and developing techniques that increase reliability of the kernel exploit, helping the properly demonstrated or demonstrate to properly demonstrate the impact and critically of the underlying vulnerabilities. What it's saying here is that what this paper is actually focusing on is how it's actually going to address this kernel heap exploit reliability problem and then make it, solidify it, and make it very secure, or is actually going to have a very great impact and critically, and the criticality of the underlying vulnerabilities. Now, the research goals, the goals of this research. This research actually, so the next topic we are going to talk about is the research goals. Now, this topic, or this paper actually investigates the effectiveness of commonly used stabilization techniques. Yeah, so it actually wants to stabilize the kernel heap exploit. He's actually looking at the stabilization of the kernel heap exploit. And it aims to determine if experts' assumptions about these techniques are accurate and under what conditions they succeed or fail. Yeah, so basically, when these techniques are brought up, it's actually going to be tested to see under what conditions, whether it's going to be successful or it's going to fail, under what conditions. And then furthermore, it actually explores the possibility of designing a novel stabilization technique or novel stabilization techniques. So we are going to discuss that in the process. And one of it is how the technique is going to be effective, the effectiveness of the technique that's going to be discussed. And then how the experts, how effective are commonly used stabilization techniques. We are going to discuss that too. It was discussed in the paper actually. In the second that it actually talks about the expert assumptions. Where are expert assumptions about these techniques correct? We are actually going to discuss too, because there were some interviews that were taken. So we are actually going to discuss the experts assumptions about the use stabilization techniques here. And the success of the conditions are under what conditions do these techniques succeed or fail? That's what I was highlighting. So that's the third point, where we are going to see if these techniques that are going to are going to be brought up, are they going to be successful, or are they going to fail? In what circumstances are they going to be successful or fail or fail? And then novel techniques, how we are actually going to design novel techniques to be able to stabilize the kernel heap exploit. Now, this paper brought about 4 research questions, and I'm going to highlight it to you here. And that is where we are going to lead, or we are going to elaborate on, or we are going to take our scope from. These questions actually were depth, and they actually made it was actually made for us to know the direction of where we are going to, or where the research is going to. Yeah, so this research aims to answer key questions about exploit stabilization technique. Now, I mean, they're talking about the kernel heap exploit. So it actually aims to answer the key questions. The question 1 is, what techniques are commonly used for stabilization of the kernel heap exploit. Then question 2 is, are experts' assumptions or certain techniques that experts bring about, or people who are already in the exploitation research domain, are the assumptions they are bringing about this technique correct? And then the third question is, under what conditions do these techniques succeed or fail? So we are going to weigh the odds and evens to see what conditions are actually conducive for it to succeed and what conditions are conducive for it to fail. Yeah, or what conditions would trigger it to fail. Yeah, so we are going to discuss those things too. Question 4 is, if we design a design novel stabilization, how are we going to design a novel stabilization technique to make the Linux kernel heap exploit very stable and solid for research? Yeah. So now we are going to discuss the approach the paper used for to write, I mean, the researchers used to write the article. This research employs a hybrid approach, combining qualitative and quantitative analysis to study the kernel heap exploit reliability problem. Yeah, so they actually use a hybrid approach in writing this paper. They use the qualitative and then they use the quantitative analysis of study. The approach involves interviewing kernel security experts, evaluating stabilization techniques on real-world exploits, and developing a generic kernel heap exploit model. So that is basically what they went in for. And the interviews with 11 kernel exploitation experts were conducted to identify commonly used stabilization techniques and gather their opinions. So their opinions and assumptions were actually gathered, which is uh, uh, what the paper was talking about. They actually interviewed experts, 11 of them, to see their options and their opinions and their assumptions to stabilize the techniques of the Linux kernel heap exploit reliability. Now, with the experimentations, the identified stabilization techniques were evaluated on 17 real-world kernel heap and its effectiveness. Yeah, so they were actually tested on different domains or different domains. Yeah, and the third one of the research approach is model development. A generic kernel heap exploit model was designed to explain the exploit reliability problem. Analyze the success and failure of the stabilization techniques and guide the development of the new technique. So in the third approach, we saw that after they interview the experts and after the test was done, a generic kernel heap exploit model was designed. And it was actually analyzed to see the success or to see how successful it is or what makes it succeed and what makes it fail. It was all tested to see, and then a guide to development, the development of new techniques. Yeah. Now, common stabilization techniques that have been implemented. The interviews revealed 5 commonly adopted stabilization techniques. So from the experts, they reviewed 5 common stabilization techniques that were used to stabilize the kernel heap exploit reliability. Now, the first one is defragmentation. The second is heap grooming. The third is single thread heap spray. The fourth is multi-process heap spray. And then the last one is CPU pinning. Now I'm going to explain these terms for us to have a very broad or great understanding about it. Now, the first technique is defragmentation. It allocates a large number of objects to fill up slabs and force the creation of new slabs with predictable layouts. Yeah. So this is one of the techniques that were used to stabilize the kernel heap exploit reliability. Now, the next technique that was used is the heap grooming. Um, the heap grooming creates This technique also creates a specific heap layout where the vulnerable object is adjacent to a victim object, beneficial for certain exploits. I mean, this is solid, but not too solid when it comes to stabilization of the kernel heap exploit reliability. And now there's another one. There's the third one, which is the single thread heap spray. Now, the single thread history occupies the desired slot by allocating many objects in the same or separate thread. And this is one of this is one of the this technique is one of the good techniques, but it also wasn't setting, or it wasn't setting about how successful it's going to be. And then the fourth one is the multi-process heap spray. Now, similar to the single heap spray, but it uses multiple processes to allocate the payload object. Now, the CPU pinning, when we have the CPU pinning, where the exploit processes and to a specific CPU and ensure consistent free list usage. Sorry. So the CPU pinning is also one of the good techniques that were discussed or erupted by the expert who named some of these stabilization techniques. Now we are going to compare the experts' opinions or the assumptions or the technique they gave with the experiment results where what the paper came up with. Now, the evaluation of these stabilization techniques on real-world exploits revealed significant discrepancies between expert opinions and experimental results. For example, many experts believe defragmentation would improve reliability for all type of exploits, but the experiment showed it was only effective for out-of-bounds access vulnerabilities. Yeah, so you realize that the defragmentation is just for a particular kind of exploit, not all types of exploits. Yeah, so with the Linux kernel heap exploit, you realize that defragmentation is actually not going to suffice every kind of exploit when it comes to the Linux kernel. But the experiment showed that it was only effective for out-of-bounds access vulnerabilities. Now, the misconceptions, and we are going to talk about the misconceptions. Experts believe that the fragmentations will improve the reliability of all types of exploits, but it was only effective for out-of-bounds access vulnerabilities. Now, the second misconception that the experts had were the experts believe that heavy workload would significantly harm the effectiveness of stabilization techniques, but the techniques still improved reliability in the busy thread phase. So you realize that most they were thinking that the experts were thinking that they believe that the heavy workload is actually going to cause a significant harm on the kernel. In the third misconception, the expert had a different opinion on which technique was most effective, but the optimal choice varied case by case. So defragmentation will not yield to every kind of kernel. The CPU pinning will not yield to every kind of exploit, will not yield to every kind of exploit. So every kind of exploit or every type of technique has its own exploits. It will be able to suffice. Now, we are going to talk about the factors influencing exploits on reliability. Yes. So the analysis of the exploit. Now now after they analyzed their technique in 17 real-world scenarios, the factors influencing the exploit unreliability is what we are going to discuss. The analysis of the exploit behavior identify several factors contributing to exploit unreliability. Unknown heap layout, unwanted task migration, unexpected heap usage, and unpredictable corruption timing. So these factors actually influence, or this analysis actually are some of the factors contributing to the exploit unreliability. Now let's talk about the unknown heap layout. Other processes can shuffle the free list, making it difficult to predict the heap layout during the exploit execution. Now, the second factor contributing to the exploit unreliability is unwanted task migration. Task migration can cause the process to operate on different free lists, leading to inconsistencies in the heap manipulation. The third one we are going to talk about is the unexpected heap usage. The context switches can interrupt heap operations. Yeah, context switches can actually interrupt heap operations, potentially destroying the expected heap layout. And then the last factor we are going to talk about is the unpredictable corruption timing. Delayed heap operations can make it difficult to predict when the heap layout will change after a vulnerability is triggered. So these are some of the factors that contribute to the exploit unreliability. And these are the four major ones that has been listed in the paper. Now let's discuss the kernel heap exploit model that was created. The kernel heap model provides a framework for understanding the kernel heap exploit process, including critical phases where unreliability factors can impact exploit success. Now the context setup, the setup of what was created. The exploit prepares, so over there you see the chart over there, or the diagrams over there. The exploit prepares the necessary context to trigger vulnerability, potentially using stabilization techniques to migrate unreliability factors. Secondly, the vulnerability effect delay. The exploit triggers the vulnerability, but the heap layout may not change immediately due to delayed operations. Allocator bracing. Now with this, the exploit restores the allocator from a corrupted state after the heap operation takes effect, ensuring the kernel does not detect the anomaly and panic. And then the final preparation of it is the exploit performs the preparations to obtain control flow hijacking primitives. So these are the frameworks for understanding the kernel heap exploit process. So basically, this is the framework that has been explained in these 4 points. Now the context conservation. Let's move our next, the context conservation, a new stabilization technique that was brought up. The context conservation is a novel step. So the new stabilization technique that was brought up was the context conservation technique. The context conservation technique. That's what I'm going to explain to you. The context conservation technique is a novel stabilization technique designed to mitigate the impact of context switches during critical phases by removing unnecessary code and injecting a stub to predict when a fresh time slice can be obtained. So this is what the paper brought about. Now, preventing context switches. Context, context conservation aims to avoid context switches during critical phase by shortening the critical phase and dedicating a first time slice. Now, predicting time slices. That's what the context conservation does. The stub measures CPU timestamps and to predict when a first time slice is available, allowing the exploits to dedicate the slide to a critical switch here. And then the code optimization. With the code optimization, unnecessary code is removed or relocated from critical phase to shorten the duration of these phases and reduce the likelihood of context switches. So this is the context conservation that was brought up. The technique that was brought up was called the context conservation. Now, composition stabilization techniques. Combining multiple stabilization techniques can significantly improve the exploit's reliability by addressing different unreliability factors. This research actually exploits the effectiveness of the composite method that combines defragmentation, CPU pinning, context conservation, and multi-process heap spray. Complementary techniques. The chosen technique complement each other by mitigating different unreliability factors such as unknown heap layout, unwanted task migration, unexpected heap usage, and unpredictable corruption timing. Now, the second technique, a stabilization technique that can significantly improve the exploit reliability is the significant improvement. Okay, so the composite method demonstrates a 135.53% exploitation reliability improvement compared to baseline exploit, indicating indicating its effectiveness in stabilization exploits against nearly arbitrary vulnerabilities. Now, outperforming real-world exploits, the composite method also outperforms real-world exploits crafted by professional securities researchers, highlighting the potential of systematic study in improving exploit stabilization. Now we are going to discuss the future directions of this wonderful paper. The future directions unveiling the potential of combinations of all these techniques we discussed earlier on. Exploring technique combination. Combining multiple stabilization techniques can significantly improve exploit reliability. Our ongoing research investigates the optimal combination of techniques for different vulnerabilities and conditions. So they actually the novel technique they brought up is investigates. They actually investigated the optimal combination of all the techniques for different vulnerabilities and conditions. Now, beyond individual techniques, we acknowledge that the techniques are not independent. Some techniques depend on the presence of others for optimal performance. So, for instance, pinning CPU can depend on defragmentation techniques. Our research aims to understand, so the research actually aims to understand the dependencies and develop comprehensive strategies for utilizing the combination. Now, unlocking power of synergies. By understanding how different techniques interact, we develop a more effective and so they're actually looking at developing more effective and how they can combine all the techniques that are available at the moment for it to have a very improve the exploit reliability or improve the kernel heap exploit reliability problem. Now, in conclusion, the reliability of Linux kernel exploits often depends on the researcher's intuition, which can lead to diverse and sometimes incorrect opinions about exploit stabilization techniques. This study actually systematically analyzes these techniques, identifies their work conditions or their working conditions, and exploit a novel approach that significantly improves the exploit reliability and exploitability assessment accuracy when combined with the existing methods. Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Timothy, and thank you for your time and